And now to the biggest developing story today. It comes from Israel. The United States opened its embassy in Jerusalem. By moving it from Tel Aviv, President Donald Trump has fulfilled a campaign promise. He's also shifted America's position. It can no more claim to be a non-aligned player in the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. And Trump has triggered a new wave of deadly protests. Gaza erupted in anger today. More than 40 people have been killed, more than 2,000 injured. WION's West Asia Bureau Chief Daniele Pagani reports from Jerusalem.
US President Donald Trump's latest move fueled fresh tensions in West Asia. On a day when the US Embassy in Jerusalem was inaugurated, protest against the move intensified in Gaza. Dozens of Palestinian protesters were killed when the Israeli forces opened fire on them at the Gaza border. Tear gas shells rained from the skies as the protesters tried to evacuate those that were hurt. The protests that were on since March intensified on Israel's 70th anniversary last month. Back then, mosques in Gaza had urged the Palestinians to join the Great March of Return. This is a grassroots movement calling for the right of return of Palestinian refugees to their homes in the State of Israel. But despite the tensions, the US Embassy in Jerusalem was inaugurated with much fanfare. Around 800 people attended the ceremony.
If you follow the sign behind me, you would reach in barely 5 minutes the new building where the United States of America relocated their embassy from the coastal city of Tel Aviv to the wholly contested city of Jerusalem. By many in Israel, this is perceived as a victory, the fulfillment of a long-standing request to recognize Jerusalem as their own capital city. And this is also a victory for the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who can claim this victory and claim to be the man who finally convinced the United States to actually shift their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
The US President's daughter and advisor Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner had flown in from Washington to attend the festivities.
The United States will always be a great friend of Israel and a partner in the cause of freedom and peace. We wish Ambassador Friedman good luck as he takes up his office in this beautiful Jerusalem embassy, and we extend a hand in friendship to Israel, the Palestinians, and to all of their neighbors.
We have no better friends in the world. You stand for Israel and you stand for Jerusalem. Thank you. What a glorious day. Remember this moment. This is history. President Trump, by recognizing history, you have made history.
Washington argues that the move to shift the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem will create greater regional stability. Both the Palestinians and the Israelis claim Jerusalem as their capital. The city contains sites sacred to both Jews and Muslims. Palestinians refuse to accept Trump's decision. They have vowed to step up their protests. When Gaza witnessed fresh clashes, thousands marched in central Ramallah. Protesters gathered at Yasser Arafat Square, dressed in black t-shirts. They waved the flag of Palestine and were seen holding up placards designed as keys. These protesters were demanding their right over the disputed territory.
And on the Palestinian side, this is perceived as a defeat. One more element that tells them that they are more and more isolated in the world, that Arab countries who did not vocally decided to fight back against what was the decision of the United States of America are now doing, which is being very much focused on Iran and perhaps having forgot the long-standing Palestinian struggle to an independent state. Daniele Pagani from Jerusalem for WION.
It's the bloodiest day in Gaza since the 2014 war. Why has this move drawn such a strong response? Why is the shift of the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem so controversial? Here's a quick explainer. Jerusalem, as we know, is a city with Jewish, Christian and Muslim holy places. Israel describes it as its united and eternal capital. But 70 years ago, when the UN voted to partition Palestine into Jewish and Arab states, Israel was defined as a separate entity under international supervision. But the war that followed Israel's declaration of independence 1 year later left Jerusalem divided. When the fighting ended in 1949, Israel was in control of the western half and Jordan was in control of the eastern half, which included the famous Old City. During a war in 1967, Israel occupied East Jerusalem. And since then, all of the city has been under Israel's authority. Palestinians and many in the international community continue to see East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state. In July 1980, Israel passed a law declaring Jerusalem the united capital of Israel. The United Nations Security Council responded with a resolution condemning Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem and declared it a violation of international law. In fact, before 1980, a number of countries, including the Netherlands and Costa Rica, had their embassies in Jerusalem. After 1980, all these countries moved their embassies out of Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. The US has never had its embassy in Jerusalem, but in 1989, Israel began leasing to the US a plot of land in Jerusalem for a new embassy. The 90-year lease cost $1 every year. The plot is an empty field to date. In 1995, the US Congress passed a law requiring America to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, as they thought the US should respect Israel's choice of Jerusalem as its capital. But every president since then, Clinton, Bush and Obama, have declined to move the embassy, citing national security interests. This is Palki Sharma Upadhyay for WION. The empty plot is now the US Embassy in Jerusalem. Daniele Pagani, our West Asia Bureau Chief, is joining us live from the Holy City. Daniele, is the situation in Gaza under control now? Is the protest expected to spill over to other parts in Palestine?
I don't think you can ever define the situation in Gaza under control, especially now. If you are talking about the current, specifically the current situation, it seems that waters have calmed down for today. Tomorrow is another very tough day. It's expected to be even tougher than today. Remember that tomorrow there are remembrance everywhere around the Palestinian territories to remember what they call the Nakba, the catastrophe, the moment when they were pushed out of their own territories by the Israeli advancing. We've just heard, I would say, tale of two stories, despite how strange it may seem. We've seen the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, saying, quote unquote, what a glorious day. And when he was saying that, at least more than 10 Palestinians had already been killed in Gaza. So this is exactly what is happening right now. On the one hand, we have a celebrating Jerusalem where flags are everywhere, where billboards are thanking Donald Trump are everywhere. And on the other side, we have Palestinians protesting against what they perceive a violation of their right to at least bring out their voice, their willingness to have Jerusalem recognized as their own capital city.
Right. Jerusalem is also a city that almost always has security personnel out on the streets. Do you sense that their numbers are bigger today? And to put this in perspective for our viewers, Daniele, the anger we know has been simmering for the last 6 months. Protests against the embassy move have not ceased, but the casualties have only been on the Palestinian side. No Israelis killed.
Well, this is normal because when this is an absolutely asymmetrical confrontation. We have an army, a regular army made of snipers and soldiers and well-trained snipers and soldiers fighting against a group of more than 40,000 people, but only armed with stones and tires, and eventually some of them, we cannot rule out, might have some personal weapons, but it is an asymmetrical confrontation, so this is why no casualties on the Israeli side. When it comes to the security level of the city, personally I do not sense that numbers are increased as of now. I do sense a heavy atmosphere. Just one example, I was walking in the bazaar inside the Damascus Gate behind me, which leads inside the walls of the old city, and many of the Arab shopkeepers were looking at videos coming out from Gaza, stopping me, evidently recognizing me as a journalist, requesting me to go to Gaza and showing me videos. So there was a sense of anger, a heavy atmosphere, and that can absolutely become something way more violent than just words tomorrow maybe.
Right. Daniel, thanks very much for holding fort for us there, and stay safe. Israel, Palestinian parts at least, on the boil over this move of the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This is a developing story.